They say your first job will change your life. They never tell you it might destroy you first. My name is Catherine Brooks, and this is the story of how I fell in love with the most powerful woman I'd ever met, and how I discovered that everything I thought was real was carefully designed to keep me quiet. This is a story about ambition, about desire, about the moment you realize the person you trusted most has been playing a game you didn't even know existed. And it's a story about finding yourself after someone else has tried to define you. Some secrets are kept behind closed doors, others are hidden in plain sight, wrapped in promotions and promises. This is mine. I arrived too early on my first day. The building was still waking up, fluorescent lights humming softly overhead, the scent of fresh coffee drifting from the break room, polished floors reflecting the pale morning light. My heels clicked against the marble with each step, announcing my presence to an empty hallway. I clutched my portfolio against my chest like a shield, trying to steady my breathing. This was it. Blackwell Consulting. The internship I'd fought for, the opportunity that could change everything. 6 months ago, I was just another graduating senior sending out dozens of applications. Now I was here, walking through doors that most people only dreamed of entering. The receptionist barely looked up when I introduced myself. She was elegant, older, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and glasses that sat at the edge of her nose. "Catherine Brooks?" she asked, though she already knew. "Miss Blackwell will see you shortly. 4th floor, corner office. The elevator is down the hall." Miss Blackwell. Diana Blackwell. The founder. The legend. I'd researched her extensively, everyone did, before working here. She'd built this company from nothing, transforming it into one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the city. She was known for being brilliant, demanding, and impossibly private. Photos of her were rare, interviews even rarer. She let her work speak for itself. The elevator ride felt eternal. I watched the numbers climb 1, 2, 3, 4, and tried to remember everything I'd rehearsed. Firm handshake, direct eye contact, confidence without arrogance. I'd practiced in the mirror until my roommate told me I looked robotic. The 4th floor was quieter than I expected. Thick carpet absorbed sound. The walls were decorated with abstract art, bold strokes of black and gold. Everything felt intentional, curated, expensive. I followed the corridor to the corner office, where frosted glass doors bore her name in elegant silver letters. Diana Blackwell, CEO. I knocked. Once, twice. "Come in!" Her voice reached me through the glass, low, controlled, unhurried. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, sunlight streaming in and casting everything in a warm glow. The furniture was modern, minimalist, a glass desk, leather chairs, shelves lined with books and awards. But none of that mattered the moment I saw her. Diana Blackwell stood by the window, silhouetted against the morning light. She was tall, composed, dressed in a black suit that fit her like it had been designed specifically for her body. Her dark hair was pulled back sleekly, revealing sharp cheekbones and a jawline that could have been carved from stone. When she turned to face me, I felt something shift in the air. Her eyes were piercing, dark, intelligent, assessing. She looked at me the way a jeweler might examine a diamond, searching for flaws, potential, value. I felt exposed under that gaze, like she could see through every carefully constructed layer I'd built around myself. "Catherine Brooks," she said, and the way she pronounced my name made it sound important. She didn't smile, but there was something in her expression, curiosity perhaps. "You're early." "I didn't want to be late," I said, then immediately regretted how eager I sounded. "Good. Punctuality matters here." She gestured toward one of the chairs in front of her desk. "Sit." I obeyed, lowering myself into the seat while she moved around the desk with effortless grace. Everything about her was deliberate, the way she walked, the way she folded her hands on the desk, the slight tilt of her head as she studied me. "Your application was impressive," she said, opening a folder that I recognized as mine. Top of your class. Multiple recommendations. Clear ambition. She paused, her eyes lifting to meet mine. Tell me, Catherine, why do you want to work here? It was a question I'd prepared for, but sitting across from her, all my rehearsed answers felt hollow. I took a breath and decided on honesty. Because I want to learn from the best, I said. Because I want to be challenged. Because working here means something. It means I'm capable of more than I thought I was. She studied me for a long moment, and I couldn't tell if I'd said the right thing or the wrong thing. Then, slowly, she nodded. You'll be working directly under me, she said. That means long hours, high expectations, and very little room for error. I don't tolerate mediocrity, and I don't offer second chances. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. Miss Blackwell is fine. Yes, Miss Blackwell. Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. Good. We'll start today. I have a meeting at 10. You'll sit in, take notes, observe. Afterward, we'll discuss what you learned. She stood, and I followed suit, feeling like I'd just passed some kind of test I didn't know I was taking. As I turned to leave, she spoke again. Catherine, I stopped, looking back at her. Don't disappoint me. The words weren't a threat. They were a challenge, and something inside me rose to meet it. The days blurred together after that. I quickly learned that working for Diana Blackwell was unlike anything I'd experienced. She was exacting, meticulous, and demanded perfection in everything. A misplaced comma in a report would earn a sharp look. A delayed response to an email meant staying late to make up for lost time. She pushed me harder than any professor ever had, and I found myself working 12, 14, sometimes 16-hour days just to keep up. But I didn't mind, because every time she nodded in approval, every time she said, "Good work, Catherine," I felt like I'd won something valuable. Her praise was rare, which made it all the more precious. I started noticing things about her. Small things. The way she drank her coffee, black, no sugar, always from the same ceramic mug. The way she tapped her pen against her desk when she was thinking. The faint scent of her perfume, something subtle and expensive, like jasmine and cedar. The way her voice softened, just slightly, when she was tired. I told myself it was professional observation. Understanding your boss was part of being a good assistant, but somewhere along the way, it became something else. I started arriving earlier, just to have a few quiet moments in the office before everyone else arrived. I'd organize her desk, make sure her coffee was ready, review her schedule so I'd be prepared for whatever she needed. And sometimes, if I was lucky, she'd walk in and find me there, and she'd pause just for a second and something unreadable would flicker across her face. You don't have to do this, she said one morning, gesturing to the perfectly arranged desk. I know, I said. I wanted to. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks. There was something in her gaze that made my breath catch something that felt like recognition. Thank you, Catherine, she said softly. It was the first time she'd thanked me for anything. It started with small touches. Accidental. At first, or at least, I told myself they were accidental. Her hand brushing mine when she handed me a file. Her fingers grazing my shoulder when she leaned over to point at something on my screen. The warmth of her presence when she stood close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her body. I tried to ignore it. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, that I was reading too much into innocent gestures. But then there were moments that felt anything but innocent, like the time we worked late, alone in the office. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. The city lights glittered through the windows, and the only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioning and the click of our keyboards. I was exhausted, my eyes burning from staring at spreadsheets, when I felt her presence behind me. You should go home, she said quietly. I'm almost done, I replied, not looking up. Catherine. Her hand came to rest on my shoulder, and this time it didn't move. Her touch was warm, firm, grounding. Go home. Get some rest. I finally looked up at her, and what I saw in her eyes made my heart stutter. There was concern there, yes, but there was something else, too. Something darker, more complicated. Are you staying? I asked. I always stay. Then I'll stay too. She studied me for a long moment, her hand still on my shoulder. Then, slowly, she pulled away. Suit yourself. But after that night, something shifted between us. The air felt heavier when we were alone. Conversations lingered longer than they needed to. And sometimes, I'd catch her watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, like she was trying to solve a puzzle she hadn't expected to encounter. The moment everything changed happened 3 weeks into my internship. It was late afternoon, and I was in Diana's office delivering a revised report. She was seated at her desk, reading through another document, her brow furrowed in concentration. I placed the folder in front of her and turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Stay. I froze, then slowly turned back around. Miss Blackwell? She looked up at me, and there was something different in her eyes, something vulnerable and guarded all at once. Sit down, Catherine. I sat, my heart beginning to race. Had I done something wrong? Was she disappointed in my work? You've been doing well, she said, which immediately eased some of my anxiety. Better than I expected, actually. Thank you. But I need to ask you something. She leaned back in her chair, studying me carefully. Why are you really here? The question caught me off guard. I told you. I want to learn. No, she shook her head. I mean here, in this office. Staying late? Arriving early? Going above and beyond what's required. She paused. What are you looking for, Catherine? I didn't know how to answer that, because the truth was, I wasn't entirely sure anymore. When I'd started, it was about ambition, about building my career. But somewhere along the way, it had become about her, about earning her approval, about being close to her. I want to prove myself, I said finally. To me? Or to yourself? Both? I thought. Neither. I don't know. To you, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or satisfaction. She stood and walked around the desk, stopping directly in front of me. I had to tilt my head back to look at her, and the power dynamic was suddenly overwhelmingly clear. You should be careful, she said softly, about how much you're willing to give. I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm not talking about work. My breath caught. The air between us felt electric, charged with something unspoken. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my palms damp against my skirt. What are you talking about? I asked, though part of me already knew. She reached out, and for a moment, I thought she was going to touch my face, but instead, her hand hovered in the air between us, and then she pulled back, as if catching herself. Nothing, she said, her voice cool again. You can go. I stood on shaky legs and left the office, my mind spinning. That night, I lay awake for hours, replaying the conversation over and over, trying to understand what had just happened. What I didn't realize was that it was only the beginning. After that day, Diana began testing boundaries, subtle things that anyone else might have missed, but that I felt acutely. She'd stand just a little too close when reviewing my work. Her hand would linger on my back when we walked together down the hallway. She'd hold eye contact for a beat too long during meetings, and I'd feel my cheeks flush under her gaze. And then there were the late nights. She started asking me to stay after everyone else had left, saying she needed help with projects that always seemed to materialize at the last minute. We'd work in comfortable silence, the city sprawling below us, and sometimes she'd order dinner expensive takeout from restaurants I couldn't afford, and we'd eat together in her office, talking about things that had nothing to do with work. She asked me about my life, my family, my dreams, and slowly, carefully, she began sharing pieces of herself, too. Small things, a mention of her childhood, a story about building her first business, a rare laugh at something I said that caught me so off guard I nearly dropped my fork. I was falling for her. I knew it, and I couldn't stop it. Every moment we spent together only pulled me deeper. And the worst part was, I thought she might be falling too. One night, we were working in her office well past midnight. I was exhausted, my eyes heavy, my body sagging in the chair. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I felt something soft being draped over my shoulders. I blinked awake to find Diana standing beside me, having just placed her suit jacket over me like a blanket. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that I felt tears prick at my eyes. "You should have woken me," I said groggily. "You needed rest." She crouched down beside my chair, bringing herself to my eye level. This close, I could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the exhaustion she tried so hard to hide. "You work too hard, Catherine. I learned from the best." She smiled a real smile, soft and genuine. And then, before I could process what was happening, she reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. Her fingers lingered against my cheek, warm and impossibly gentle. "Diana," I whispered, using her first name for the first time. She pulled back immediately, the moment broken. "It's late. I'll call you a car. I can take the subway." "I'll call you a car," she repeated, her voice firm. She stood and walked back to her desk, putting distance between us once again. I left that night with her jacket still wrapped around my shoulders, her scent clinging to the fabric. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever was happening between us was dangerous. But I didn't want to stop. The turning point came during a company gala. Blackwell Consulting was hosting a charity event, a black tie affair attended by clients, investors, and the city's elite. As Diana's assistant, I was expected to attend, to help coordinate and ensure everything ran smoothly. I'd bought a dress I couldn't afford, a deep emerald gown that hugged my figure and made me feel, for the first time in months, like something other than an exhausted intern. When I arrived at the venue, I immediately began working, checking on catering, confirming the guest list, making sure every detail was perfect. I didn't see Diana until an hour into the event, and when I did, I forgot how to breathe. She wore a black gown that was somehow both elegant and devastating. Her hair was down for once, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. She moved through the crowd with effortless grace, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, commanding every room she entered. And then she saw me. Our eyes met across the room, and everything else faded. She excused herself from the conversation she was having and walked toward me, her gaze never leaving mine. "Catherine," she said when she reached me. Her eyes traveled slowly down my body and back up, and I felt that look like a physical touch. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," I managed. "You look stunning." Something shifted in her expression. "Dance with me." "What?" "Dance with me," she repeated, offering her hand. I glanced around nervously. "We're working." "One dance." Her voice was soft but insistent. "Please." I took her hand, and she led me onto the dance floor. The music was slow, romantic, and as she pulled me close, I felt like every eye in the room was on us. But Diana didn't seem to care. She held me like I was something precious, one hand at my waist, the other clasping mine. "I shouldn't be doing this," she murmured, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. "Then why are you?" "Because I can't seem to help myself." We swayed together, and I was hyper-aware of every point where our bodies touched. Her hand was warm through the thin fabric of my dress. Her perfume surrounded me. And when I looked up at her, I saw something in her eyes that made my heart ache. "Diana, don't," she whispered. "Don't say anything. Just let me have this moment." So I did. I let myself sink into her embrace. Let myself pretend, just for a few minutes, that this was real. That we were just two women dancing, nothing complicated, nothing forbidden. When the song ended, she pulled away slowly, reluctantly. Her hand lingered at my waist for just a second longer than necessary. "Thank you," she said softly. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing back into the crowd. I stood there on the dance floor, my heart racing, my body still tingling from her touch, and I knew, without a doubt, that I was in too deep. The next morning, I arrived at the office to find an envelope on my desk. Inside was a handwritten note on Diana's personal stationery. "Come to my office. We need to talk." My hands shook as I walked down the hallway. When I entered her office, she was standing by the window again, her back to me. "Close the door," she said without turning around. I did, then stood there waiting, my heart pounding. "Last night was a mistake," she said, her voice tight. I crossed a line I shouldn't have. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Diana." "Miss Blackwell," she corrected, finally turning to face me. Her expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. "We need to maintain professional boundaries, Catherine. What happened last night can't happen again." "Why not?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "Why can't it happen again?" "Because you work for me. Because there are rules, Catherine. Rules that exist for good reasons. I don't care about the rules." "Well, I do." Her voice was sharp now, cutting. "I've built this company from nothing. I won't risk it. I won't risk everything for—" She trailed off, but the implication hung in the air. "For you. For this." I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Is that all I am to you? A risk?" Something cracked in her expression. For a moment, she looked almost anguished. "Catherine, you have no idea." But she stopped herself, shaking her head. "This conversation is over. Get back to work." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that I saw the way she looked at me, that I felt the same pull she did. But the wall was back up, and Diana Blackwell had transformed back into the untouchable CEO I'd met on my first day. So I left, closing the door quietly behind me. For the next week, Diana treated me with cool professionalism. She was polite, distant, and strictly business. No more late nights alone together. No more lingering touches. No more moments of vulnerability. It was torture. But then, 8 days after our conversation, I received an email at 11 p.m. My office. Now, I shouldn't have gone. I should have ignored it, should have maintained the distance she'd insisted upon. But I grabbed my coat and headed back to the building, my heart in my throat. When I arrived, the office was empty except for the security guard, who waved me through with barely a glance. I took the elevator to the 4th floor, my hands trembling. Diana's office door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and found her standing by the window, a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't turn when I entered. "Close the door," she said quietly. I did. "Lock it." My hand hesitated on the lock for just a moment before I turned it, the click echoing in the silence. She finally turned to face me, and what I saw in her eyes made my breath catch. All the control, all the distance she'd maintained, it was gone. In its place was raw, naked want. "I tried," she said, her voice rough. "I tried to stay away from you. I tried to do the right thing." "Diana, let me finish." She set down her wine glass and crossed the room toward me. "Every day, I tell myself that this is wrong, that I'm your boss, that you're too young, too innocent, too good for someone like me, that I should let you go before I ruin you." She stopped directly in front of me, so close I could feel the heat radiating from her body. "But then I see you," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And all of that falls away. And all I can think about is how much I want you." My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. "Then stop fighting it. Catherine, if we do this," she reached out, her fingers hovering near my face. "If we cross this line, there's no going back. Everything changes. Do you understand that?" "Yes. And you still want this?" I stepped closer, closing the distance between us until our bodies were nearly touching. "I've wanted this since the first day I walked into your office." Something broke in her then. She reached up and cupped my face in her hands, her touch achingly gentle. "You're going to be the end of me," she whispered. And then she kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, like she'd been starving and I was sustenance. Her lips moved against mine with an urgency that stole my breath, her hands threading into my hair, pulling me closer. I kissed her back with equal fervor, my hands finding her waist, feeling the warmth of her body through her silk blouse. We stumbled backward until my back hit the door. She pressed against me, her body flush with mine, and I gasped into her mouth. Every nerve in my body was alive, sparking, burning. When she finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. Her forehead rested against mine, her hands still tangled in my hair. "We shouldn't," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said. "Don't talk yourself out of this. Not now." She looked at me, searching my eyes for something doubt, maybe, or hesitation, but all she would have found was certainty. "Come here," she said, taking my hand. She led me to the leather couch in the corner of her office. We sat down facing each other, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. Really looked. "I need you to understand something," Diana said, her thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. "This isn't just about attraction for me. You're in my head, Catherine. You've gotten under my skin in a way I didn't think was possible anymore." "I feel the same way," I admitted. "I think about you constantly. When I'm working, when I'm home, when I should be sleeping. You're all I think about." She smiled, sad and beautiful. "This is complicated. I know. People will talk. There will be consequences. I don't care. You should." She reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "But I'm too selfish to walk away now." She kissed me again, softer this time, tender. Her lips moved against mine like she was memorizing me, learning me, and I let myself fall into it, into her, into this dangerous, beautiful thing we were creating. We stayed in her office until dawn, talking, kissing, learning the shape of each other. She told me things she'd never told anyone about the loneliness of building an empire, about the sacrifices she'd made, about the walls she'd built around herself to survive in a world that expected perfection. And I told her about my fears, my dreams, my insecurities, about how sometimes I felt like I was just playing at being competent, waiting for someone to figure out I didn't belong. "You belong," she said firmly, her hand cupping my cheek. "Don't ever doubt that." As the sun began to rise, painting the office in shades of gold and pink, she walked me to the door. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," she said, "we're careful. We can't let anyone know about this, not yet, maybe not ever. This stays between us." "Okay." She kissed me one more time, soft and lingering. "Go home. Get some rest. And Catherine?" "Yes?" "Don't regret this. Whatever happens, please don't regret this." I touched her face, feeling the smoothness of her skin beneath my palm. "I won't. I promise." I left the building as the city was waking up, and for the first time in weeks, I felt alive. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that someone had been watching, and everything I thought I knew was about to come crashing down. The next few weeks were intoxicating. During the day, Diana and I maintained perfect professionalism. She was still the demanding CEO, and I was still the diligent intern. We spoke in measured tones during meetings, kept appropriate distance in public spaces, and never let our eyes linger too long. To everyone else, nothing had changed. But behind closed doors, we were something else entirely. She'd call me into her office for urgent matters that turned into stolen kisses against the door. She'd brush past me in empty hallways, her hand grazing mine for just a second, sending electricity through my entire body. And at night, when the building emptied and the city lights sparkled below, we'd find each other in her office, and the rest of the world would disappear. I learned the taste of her lips, the sound of her breathing when I touched her, the way she said my name when we were alone, soft, reverent, like a prayer. She was gentle with me in ways I hadn't expected, patient and attentive, always making sure I was comfortable, always putting me first. "You're trembling," she whispered one night, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw as we lay together on her office couch. "Are you cold?" "No," I breathed. "I'm just overwhelmed. In the best way." She smiled and pulled me closer, wrapping her arms around me. "You're extraordinary, Catherine Brooks. Do you know that?" I buried my face in her neck, breathing in her scent. "I feel extraordinary when I'm with you." "Good," she murmured, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Because you are." I should have known it was too perfect. I should have seen the signs. But I was too caught up in the rush of it all, the secrecy, the passion, the way she made me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered. I didn't notice the cameras in the corners of her office. I didn't question why she always insisted we stay in that specific room. I didn't wonder why she never invited me to her home, why we never went anywhere public together, why everything had to remain hidden. I was so blinded by what I thought was love that I couldn't see the cage being built around me. The first crack appeared on a Monday morning. I arrived at the office to find an envelope on my desk, plain, unmarked, sealed. My name was written on the front in unfamiliar handwriting. I looked around, but the office was busy, people moving past without paying attention to me. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph, printed on glossy paper. It was me and Diana, in her office, kissing. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. Diana's hands in my hair, my body pressed against hers, the Venetian blinds casting shadows across our faces. Someone had been watching us. Someone new. My hands shook as I shoved the photo back into the envelope and looked around wildly. Who had sent this? What did they want? I tried to calm my racing heart, tried to think rationally. Maybe it was just someone trying to scare me. Maybe it was a prank. But deep down, I knew better. This was a warning. I needed to tell Diana. I waited until lunch, when most people cleared out of the office, then knocked on her door. She looked up from her computer, her expression softening when she saw me. "Catherine, come in." I closed the door behind me and pulled the envelope from my bag. "Someone left this on my desk this morning." I handed it to her and watched as she opened it. Her face remained perfectly composed as she looked at the photograph, but I saw the way her jaw tightened, the way her fingers gripped the edge of the paper just a little too hard. "When did you receive this?" she asked, her voice calm. "This morning. It was just there. I don't know who left it." She studied the photo for a long moment, then carefully placed it back in the envelope and set it on her desk. "This is unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" I stared at her. "Diana, someone's been watching us. Someone knows. I'm aware of what this means, Catherine." Her voice was sharp now, cutting. "I need you to stay calm." "Stay calm? How am I supposed to stay calm when—" "Because panicking won't help either of us." She stood and walked to the window, her back to me. "I'll handle this." "How?" "That's not your concern." Her dismissiveness stung. "Not my concern?" "Diana, I'm in that photo too. This affects me just as much as it affects you." She turned to face me, and there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before, something cold and calculating. "You need to trust me. Can you do that?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe that she had everything under control, that she would protect us both. But something felt wrong. Something felt off. "Yes," I said finally. "I trust you." She nodded once. "Good. Now go back to your desk and act like nothing happened. Don't discuss this with anyone. Do you understand?" "Yes." As I left her office, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a terrible mistake. Over the next few days, Diana became distant again. She avoided being alone with me, kept our interactions strictly professional, and barely made eye contact during meetings. It was like the past few weeks had never happened, like we'd never kissed, never held each other, never whispered promises in the dark. I told myself she was just being cautious, that she was protecting us both, but the ache in my chest grew stronger with each day of silence. Then, on Thursday, I received another envelope. This time, there were multiple photographs. Me and Diana in her office from different angles, different nights. Some showed us talking, Others showed us kissing, embracing, and at the bottom of the stack was a note, typed on plain white paper. She's done this before. Ask her about Emma. My blood ran cold. Emma? Who was Emma? I didn't wait this time. I went straight to Diana's office and closed the door behind me. Who's Emma? I demanded, throwing the envelope on her desk. Diana looked up at me, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across her face, guilt, maybe, or fear. But then her mask slipped back into place. Where did you get that name? She asked quietly. Answer my question. Who is Emma? She stood slowly, deliberately, buying herself time. Emma was someone I worked with, a long time ago. Someone you worked with? Or someone like me? The silence that followed was answer enough. How many? I asked, my voice shaking. How many others have there been? Catherine. How many, Diana? She closed her eyes briefly. 3. Including you. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. 3. It's not what you think. Then what is it? I stepped closer to her desk, anger overriding my fear. Because right now, it looks like I'm just the latest in a pattern. Just another naive intern who fell for her powerful boss. That's not fair. Isn't it? Tell me the truth, Diana. All of it. What happened to the others? She was quiet for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Emma left the company. She received a generous severance package and signed a non-disclosure agreement. The same with the other 2. You paid them off. I gave them opportunities. Career advancements, financial security, things they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. In exchange for their silence. In exchange for discretion. She looked at me, and there was something desperate in her eyes now. Catherine, you have to understand what we have is real. What I feel for you is real. But I can't let this company fall apart. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much. So you manipulate young women who look up to you? Who trust you? Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. Was any of it real, Diana? Or was I just another transaction? It was real, she said fiercely, moving around the desk toward me. Every moment was real. The way I feel about you. Stop. I held up my hand, backing away from her. Just stop. I can't do this right now. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Catherine, wait, please. I looked back at her, and what I saw broke my heart. She looked vulnerable, frightened, almost human, but I couldn't let myself soften. Not now. I need time to think, I said. I need space. Please don't leave me, she whispered. But I was already gone. I didn't go back to the office for 3 days. I called in sick, which wasn't entirely a lie. I felt sick to my stomach. Sick with betrayal. Sick with the realization that everything I'd thought was special had been a carefully orchestrated pattern. I spent those days in my apartment, replaying every moment we'd shared, looking for signs I'd missed. And now that I was looking, I could see them everywhere. The way she'd controlled every aspect of our relationship. The way she'd kept everything hidden. The way she'd never once mentioned a future beyond stolen moments in her office. I'd been so desperate for her approval, so hungry for her attention, that I'd ignored all the red flags. On the 4th day, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find a courier holding a large manila envelope. Catherine Brooks? He asked. Yes. This is for you. Please sign here. I signed and took the envelope inside. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a formal offer letter, a promotion to junior consultant, a significant salary increase, a corner office on the 3rd floor, and a separate document, a non-disclosure agreement, identical to the ones Emma and the others must have signed. At the bottom was a handwritten note from Diana. I never wanted it to end this way. You deserve better than what I can give you. Please accept this offer. Start fresh. Build the career you've always wanted. And please, forgive me for not being strong enough to walk away before I hurt you. You were never just a transaction. You were the one I should have chosen. but I've never been good at choosing myself over the company. Goodbye, Catherine. I read the note 3 times, tears blurring the words. Part of me wanted to tear it all up, to march back into that office and tell her exactly what I thought of her and her blood money. But another part, the part that had worked so hard to get where I was, saw the opportunity for what it was. A way out. A way up. A way to salvage something from this wreckage. I sat with those documents for hours, weighing my options, thinking about who I wanted to be. The naive girl who'd walked into Blackwell Consulting 6 weeks ago would have refused, would have fought for some sense of justice or truth. But I wasn't that girl anymore. The next morning, I returned to the office. I walked past my old desk without looking at it, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and found my new office exactly as promised. Corner view, modern furniture, my name already on the door. Catherine Brooks, junior consultant. I sat down at my new desk and opened my laptop. An email was waiting from HR, welcoming me to my new position and requesting I stop by to complete the paperwork. I gathered the signed documents, including the NDA, and headed down the hall. The HR representative was pleasant, efficient, and asked no questions. She processed everything quickly, shook my hand, and congratulated me on my advancement. "You're very lucky," she said with a smile. "Miss Blackwell doesn't usually promote interns this quickly. You must have made quite an impression." "Yes," I said quietly. "I suppose I did." As I left HR, I caught sight of Diana at the end of the hallway. She was standing outside her office, talking to someone. But when she saw me, she stopped mid-sentence. Our eyes met across the distance, and for a moment, everything else fell away. I saw regret in her gaze, longing, sadness, and something else, resignation, maybe, or acceptance that this was how it had to end. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to feel nothing but anger and betrayal. But instead, I felt a deep, aching grief for what we'd had and what we'd lost. I turned away first, breaking eye contact, and walked back to my new office. I closed the door, sat down at my desk, and began working on the first file in my inbox. If I was going to do this, if I was going to accept this promotion and move forward, then I needed to commit to it fully. I needed to become someone new. Weeks passed, then months. I threw myself into my work with a sturdy intensity that impressed even the most demanding partners. I took on challenging projects, worked long hours, exceeded every expectation. My reputation grew. People started seeking me out for advice, for collaboration. I was becoming exactly what I'd always wanted to be: successful, respected, powerful in my own right. But at night, alone in my apartment, I would sometimes think about Diana, about the softness in her eyes when she looked at me, about the way she'd held me like I was something precious, about the words she'd whispered in the dark that I'd wanted so desperately to believe. I never saw her anymore. She operated on a different floor, in different circles. The company was large enough that we could exist in completely separate orbits. And perhaps that was intentional on both our parts, a mutual agreement to stay away from each other, to let the wound heal without constantly reopening it. Sometimes I'd hear her name mentioned in meetings or see her signature on documents that crossed my desk. And each time, I'd feel a small jolt of recognition, like touching an electric fence and being reminded, yes, this still hurts. About 4 months after my promotion, I was asked to present at a company-wide meeting. It was a huge opportunity. All the senior partners would be there, along with Diana. I spent days preparing, making sure every slide was perfect, every word carefully chosen. The morning of the presentation, I dressed in my best suit, a charcoal gray number that made me look professional and confident. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the eager, uncertain intern. In her place stood someone polished, capable, and just a little bit harder around the edges. The conference room was packed when I arrived. I set up my laptop, tested the projector, and tried to ignore the way my heart was racing. And then Diana walked in. She looked the same, impeccably dressed, perfectly composed, radiating that same quiet authority I'd fallen for. But when our eyes met, I saw something I hadn't expected. Pride. She gave me the smallest nod acknowledgement, encouragement, maybe even respect, and took her seat at the head of the table. I began my presentation. My voice was steady, my delivery confident. I'd practiced so many times that the words flowed naturally, and I could see people nodding along, impressed. When I finished, there was genuine applause. "Excellent work, Miss Brooks," one of the senior partners said. "Truly exceptional." Others chimed in with their praise, and I accepted it graciously, professionally. And when Diana spoke, her voice was warm but measured. "Catherine has proven herself to be one of our most valuable assets," she said, looking directly at me. "Her dedication and talent are exactly what this company needs." Well done. The words should have felt like a victory, but instead, they felt like a closing door final, irrevocable. After the meeting, people crowded around me, asking questions, offering congratulations. I smiled and thanked them, playing the part perfectly. And when I finally looked up, Diana was gone. That evening, I stayed late at the office, not because I had work to do, but because I wasn't ready to go home to my empty apartment. I sat at my desk, staring out at the city lights, thinking about how much had changed in such a short time. There was a soft knock on my door. I turned, expecting to see the cleaning crew, but instead found Diana standing in the doorway. "May I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "Of course." She entered and closed the door behind her, standing awkwardly near the entrance like she wasn't sure she had the right to be there. We looked at each other in silence for a long moment. "Your presentation was excellent," she said finally. "Thank you. You've done well here. Better than I expected." "Is that a compliment or a criticism?" A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "A compliment. You've proven me wrong, Catherine." I thought. "I thought this would break you. But you're stronger than I gave you credit for." "Did you come here to congratulate yourself for making me stronger?" The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. "No." She moved closer, stopping a few feet from my desk. "I came to apologize." "You already apologized. In your note." "I know. But I needed to say it to your face. I needed you to see how sorry I am for what I did, for how I hurt you." She took a breath, and I could see how much this was costing her. "You weren't a transaction, Catherine. You were never just another intern. What we had, what I felt for you, it was real. Maybe the most real thing I've felt in years. But not real enough to change," I said quietly. "No," she admitted. "Not real enough to change. Because I'm too much of a coward to risk everything I've built. Even for you." The honesty of it hit me harder than I expected. At least she wasn't making excuses. At least she was owning her choices. "Why are you really here, Diana?" I asked. "What do you want from me?" She was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I want to know if you hate me." I considered the question carefully. Did I hate her? Part of me wanted to say yes, wanted to hurt her the way she'd hurt me, but that would have been a lie. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate you, but I don't trust you either, and I can't. I can't be what I was to you. Not anymore." She nodded, blinking back tears I'd never seen before. "I understand." "Do you?" I stood and walked around my desk, stopping a few feet from her. "Because I don't think you do. I don't think you understand what it's like to realize that something you thought was special was just predictable. That you were just following a script someone else had written. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's how I feel." I crossed my arms, protecting myself. "You say what we had was real, but you were always in control, Diana. Every moment, every touch, every word. You knew exactly what you were doing, and I was just trying to keep up. I never wanted to control you. I wanted to protect you." "From what? From making my own choices? From deciding what I was willing to risk?" I shook my head. "You didn't protect me. You kept me in a box. A beautiful, intoxicating box, but still a box. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "You're right, about all of it. And I can't undo what I've done. I can't give you back the innocence I took." "I don't want innocence back," I said firmly. "I want to move forward. I want to build something that's mine, a career, a life. Maybe eventually something with someone who sees me as an equal, not a project." "You deserve that," Diana said softly. "You deserve all of that and more." We stood there in silence. Two people who'd once been so close, now separated by an unbridgeable distance. "I should go," Diana said finally. "Yes." She turned toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Catherine, you were the one who made me want to be better. And I'm sorry I couldn't live up to that." Then she left, closing the door quietly behind her. I stood alone in my office, surrounded by all the trappings of success I'd earned, and allowed myself to cry. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd learned. About power, about desire, about the difference between being chosen and choosing yourself. 6 months later, I received an email from a headhunter. A rival consulting firm wanted to recruit me. The position was impressive senior consultant, leadership track, significant autonomy. It was everything I'd worked for and more. I thought about it for exactly 1 day before accepting. My resignation letter was brief and professional. I gave the standard 2 weeks' notice and offered to help train my replacement. The HR department processed it efficiently, and my colleagues threw me a small going-away party filled with well wishes and promises to stay in touch. Diana didn't attend. On my last day, I packed up my office and said my goodbyes. As I was leaving, I made one final stop, the 4th floor. Diana's office door was closed, her assistant away from her desk. I stood outside for a moment, my hand hovering over the door handle. I could knock. I could say a proper goodbye. I could have closure. But maybe closure was overrated. Maybe the best thing I could do was walk away, carrying the lessons I'd learned without dwelling on the pain that had taught them to me. I turned and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of that familiar hallway, those frosted glass doors, that entire world I was leaving behind. The elevator descended, and with each passing floor, I felt lighter. By the time I reached the lobby, I was almost smiling. Outside, the city stretched before me, full of possibility, full of promise. I hailed a cab and gave the driver my address, settling back into the seat as we pulled into traffic. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your new position. You're going to do incredible things. D." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. If I was going to move forward, I needed to stop looking back. 3 months into my new job, I met someone. Her name was Rachel, and she was a project manager at a tech startup. We met at a networking event, bonded over shared frustrations about corporate culture, and exchanged numbers. Our first date was casual coffee, conversation, laughter that came easily and without complication. She didn't work for me. I didn't work for her. There was no power imbalance, no secrets, no carefully orchestrated seduction. Just two people getting to know each other, slowly, honestly, as equals. It was terrifying and wonderful and nothing like what I'd had with Diana. And that was exactly what I needed. "Tell me something true about yourself," Rachel said one evening as we walked through the park, our hands loosely intertwined. I thought about all the true things I could tell her. About the ambition that still drove me. About the scars I carried from my time at Blackwell Consulting. About the woman I'd once loved who'd taught me everything about desire and nothing about trust. But instead, I said, I'm still figuring out who I want to be. But for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the answer. She squeezed my hand and smiled. I like that answer. Yeah, I said, smiling back. Me too. A year later, I was promoted again at my new firm. I'd built a reputation for excellence, for integrity, for being someone people could trust. My team respected me not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. And every day, I worked to be the kind of leader I'd once wished Diana could have been. I still thought about her sometimes, usually late at night, when I was alone with my thoughts. I wondered if she was happy, if she'd changed, if there was another young intern sitting in my old desk, falling for the same carefully crafted illusion. But mostly, I thought about gratitude. Because as painful as that experience had been, it had taught me what I didn't want. It had shown me the difference between passion and manipulation, between being desired and being seen, and it had forced me to grow up, to develop a spine, to learn that the most important person I needed to be true to was myself. One evening, I was having dinner with Rachel at our favorite restaurant when my phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Diana Blackwell steps down as CEO of Blackwell Consulting. I clicked on the article. It was brief, citing personal reasons for her departure. The board had appointed an interim CEO, and Diana would be taking an extended sabbatical. There was no mention of scandal, no hint of wrongdoing, just a quiet exit from the empire she'd built. "Everything okay?" Rachel asked, noticing my expression. "Yeah," I said, setting my phone down. "Just some news from my old company." "Anything important?" I thought about it. Once upon a time, anything involving Diana Blackwell would have consumed me, would have felt earth-shattering. But now it was just information, a footnote in a chapter of my life that was already closed. "No," I said honestly. "Not anymore." Rachel smiled and reached across the table to take my hand. "Good, because I have something important to ask you." "Oh?" "I got offered a position in Seattle. It's a huge opportunity, but it would mean relocating." She paused, her eyes searching mine. "And I was hoping you might consider coming with me. No pressure. I'd like to see where this goes. With us." My heart swelled. This was real. This was someone choosing me, not because I fit into a pattern or filled a role, but because she genuinely wanted me in her life. As a partner. As an equal. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I'd love to." Her face lit up, and she laughed pure joy. Uncomplicated and true. "Really?" "Really." I squeezed her hand. "I'm ready for something new. Something honest. Something ours." We spent the rest of dinner making plans, talking about the future with an excitement that felt earned, not stolen. And when we left the restaurant and walked into the cool night air, I realized something profound. I was happy. Genuinely. Authentically happy. Not because I'd gotten revenge on Diana. Not because I'd achieved some perfect career milestone. But because I'd learned to choose myself. To value my own worth. To understand that being powerful didn't mean controlling others, it meant having the courage to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, to grow. Diana had taught me what I didn't want to be. Rachel was teaching me what I could become. And somewhere in between those two women, I was learning to be myself. 2 years after leaving Blackwell Consulting, I heard through the grapevine that Diana had moved to Europe. She'd sold her stake in the company and was apparently doing consulting work on a much smaller scale. No more empire. No more assistants and corner offices and carefully managed power dynamics. I hoped she'd found peace. I hoped she'd learned from her mistakes the way I'd learned from mine. But mostly, I hoped she'd found a way to be happy without needing to control everything around her. As for me, I was thriving. Rachel and I had built a life together in Seattle, a small house with a garden, a dog we'd adopted from a shelter, Sunday mornings spent cooking breakfast and reading the paper. I'd been promoted to partner at my firm, and I loved my work without letting it consume me. I'd learned balance. I'd learned boundaries. I'd learned that strength wasn't about never being vulnerable, it was about choosing who you were vulnerable with. And on quiet evenings, when Rachel was reading beside me on the couch and our dog was snoring at our feet, I would think about the young woman I'd been when I first walked into Blackwell Consulting. So hungry for approval, so desperate to prove herself, so willing to lose herself in someone else's orbit. I didn't regret her. She'd brought me here, after all, but I was grateful I'd grown beyond her. Because the truth I'd finally learned was this: the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. And once you get that right, everything else falls into place. I'd been broken by Diana Blackwell, but I'd been rebuilt by my own hands. And the person I'd become was stronger, wiser, and infinitely more whole than the person I'd been before. That was my real promotion. My real corner office. My real success. Not the title on my business card or the number in my bank account, but the peace in my heart, the confidence in my choices, the knowledge that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, and that was worth more than anything Diana could have ever given me. If you're listening to this, maybe you see yourself in my story. Maybe you've been where I was caught between ambition and something that felt like love. Maybe you're there right now, wondering if what you're feeling is real or if you're just another name in someone else's pattern. Here's what I want you to know. You are not a transaction. You are not a secret that needs to be kept. And you are not defined by the person who couldn't see your full worth. It took me losing myself to finally find myself. It took betrayal to understand what real love looks like. And it took walking away from everything I thought I wanted to discover what I actually needed. Your story doesn't have to end the way mine almost did. You have the power to choose differently, to demand better, to walk away before the cage is fully built. If my story resonated with you, please share it, like it, subscribe to hear more stories like mine. Because the more we talk about these things, the less power they have over us. And if you're struggling with something similar right now, know this. You're stronger than you think. You're worth more than they're offering. And there's a whole life waiting for you on the other side of that door if you're brave enough to walk through it. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you write yours. This is Catherine Brooks, reminding you that the most important love story you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Until next time, choose you.